Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Dancing Sober, where we don't do any dancing and we don't talk about being sober. Hi. Like every week, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Movita Juice Bar. Movita Juice Bar is a place that uses only good stuff in all of their products, great ingredients. Go to movitajuicebar.com or use your food apps to have it delivered to you. Movita Juice Bar. We also have another sponsor, Picaresca Cafe. Picaresca Cafe is a little spot in Boyle Heights with some of the best coffee I've had. And pretty soon they're going to be producing our personal roast here at Dancing Sober. Those bags will be sitting up here real soon, and you can get some Dancing Sober blend coffee. Thank you to Picaresca Cafe. I want to give another shout out to this studio here, Outer Circle Media, where we kick butt once a week in this little tiny box to bring things to you. So thank you to all of them. And this week we have a very special guest, a museum professional currently working at the Vincent Price Art Museum. Ladies and gentlemen, Nathalie Sanchez. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dancing Sober podcast. And today we have the very special guest, La Señorita Nathalie Sanchez. Hi Nathalie, welcome.
Hello.
Nathalie, you're a museum worker, I guess is what the general term is, or what would be the general term?
Museum worker, museum professional, museum educator. Yes, any and all.
Museum gente. So we'll get into all that in a minute. But I want to, of course, like we always do here, is start with more things about you and yourself. So, like, tell us a little bit about where you're from, where you grew up.
My
You don't have to
story.
say the year. You just yeah, your origin story. Yeah, let's hear the origin story.
I was born in Los Alamitos.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever heard anybody say I was born in Los Alamitos.
I was.
That's funny.
My mother told me I was born in a nun hospital, received by nuns. Hospital no longer exists. But my first few years, I was raised in Fullerton, actually.
Wow,
Yeah, my family.
OC in the house.
I know. Shh, don't tell anybody.
It's all good.
But then around the age of 4 or 5, was divorce that caused us to move. So we ended up landing in Cudahy, a very small city in southeast Los Angeles.
Cudahy.
I know. A lot of pronunciations, let me tell you. Every time we were on the news, it was Kuruhai. And the works, yes. And I think pretty often when I even mentioned it, as a younger person, people would immediately ask me, "Coulda what?" "Coulda what?" And eventually I just started saying, "Oh, Southeast Los Angeles." I think before it even became a term.
Yeah.
And I was raised there. Yeah, I went to school, Park Avenue Elementary, then on to high school. It's Elizabeth Learning Center. And even then, people would be like, "Sylvan Learning Center?" And I was like, "No, it's actually a K-12, you know?" And it was pretty remarkable that the campus was able to have a health center, an adult like learning center, K-12, schooling, and even after school program. And from there, I went to college. But
Wait, where'd you go to high school?
Elizabeth Learning Center.
Oh, that was a high school.
That was the name of the high
Learning
school.
Center.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It was
So it was like a charter school.
It was not. It was, yeah. So again, I know. It's you're like, what is this? What are you talking about?
Can we see receipts? Like, did you really go to school?
No, this was a public school.
Okay.
And it was made up of 2 academies, the Information Technology Academy and the Health Academy.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean,
so
that's what a lot of schools do now. Oh, okay, magnet too. Yeah. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
And which magnet were you a part of?
The IT Academy. So the Information Technology Academy.
No way.
But more than that, it was the classes, you know, the teachers there.
Yeah.
And one in particular was my AP Art History teacher. And that's really what kind of, I think, spawned or planted the seed of I guess who I am today, really, in a lot of
Yeah.
ways.
So I mean, that teaching environment or that like academic or whatever school environment, it's a lot more like free in a way.
Well, you know what? Interestingly enough, they were introducing project-based learning.
Mm.
And so within the academies, the different subject or single subject teachers would work together to work on a class project, which I appreciated. Whether that be a research paper or even a debate. So like it kind of varied from year to year.
But that's awesome because at a really young age, you start to learn how to collaborate with other people to make a project together. So you learn how to time manage and delegate work. Things like that.
Definitely. I think more than anything, we did a lot of presentations. And well, yeah, so really exercising communication skills. And then even more than that, just thinking about being introduced to different software. I think at the time it was still kind of new, right? Websites were still being developed, and it was just like a whole new world, and so that was.
What
good.
year did you graduate high school?
2003.
Okay. So that's when the internet became a lot. Like everybody was using the internet now, and people started going on Facebook around that time, or not yet?
Actually,
No. But people started building their own websites and stuff. I think I was building websites around that time. I don't know, but. So you finished high school, but I this is what I wanted to say. I want to like imagine like young Nathalie like doing a presentation. Like, were you like nervous, or were you that girl in class that people were always like, let Nathalie do it?
Well, I was pretty ambitious then. I think like I am now. So I was very accustomed to leadership roles.
That's awesome. Yeah,
So
I can see that.
I was, for example, I was in academic decathlon. I was in leadership positions for like even clubs. So there was an art club. We had something called the Rubber Band Club, which was a service-oriented club. Yeah, it's kind of like thinking about a rubber band and its reach. And I was in softball. I was in basketball. I was really trying.
Sports, huh?
I tried.
Yeah. No, I mean, but you were active. I mean, you stayed busy. That's extremely busy for a high school student.
The level of rigor that was expected of us was one thing, but also kind of for me was thinking like also past high school, college, right? So I was already like my eye was on the prize. I was like, I want to go to college, and what do I need to get there? And so we did have some, mentors and teachers just try to help guide us. And they would tell us like, you want to make sure you build your resume basically, and make sure that you have a great personal statement, and the works.
So at that age already you were piling stuff on and like constantly adding more things for yourself to do. When did that start for you? Like, can you remember when you just suddenly started taking on projects and started adding things, or was it that high school?
I would say, maybe high school. Yeah. I mean, now mind you, Cudahy, like I said, it's a pretty small city. It's actually the second smallest in LA County. And at the time, it was one of the most densely populated cities in the country. And it felt like there was such limited resources and not much activity going on. So through my younger eyes, I always saw potential. I think that was always something that like still rings true. Like I see so much potential, and had I, given the resources and maybe even like the decision-making, power, like if I'm able to do something and make those connections and see like this outcome of a project, a program, whatever it is, I think that's kind of for me where I see connection from then to now.
So you started to see things that were possible, and you started wanting to figure out how to make those things possible, and started to want to do those things and push things forward?
Yes, and eventually I think I started thinking about it just creatively, right? Through a creative lens, or if you will, like creative problem solving. And then once I went to college, that's when I started realizing, oh, I could actually choose my classes now. So I opted for the arts.
Before that, were you into art? Did you draw? Did you have any kind of
Yeah, I drew a little bit. I feel like that's how a lot of us start. You just start doodling, you draw. Maybe it's characters, maybe, something from popular culture, maybe. And then you're like identified as a class artist. And then, somehow you just get nominated for things like, oh, you should be the one to work on this. And then like I said, so I think the AP Art History class is really the moment where I was able to kind of gain the knowledge and the vocabulary to speak to it and realize how multi-layered and complex it really is.
And so where'd you go to college?
Loyola Marymount University.
Good school.
It was between that or UCLA.
Yeah.
So that was my...
Do you think you made the right choice?
Wow.
I don't know.
Question. I will admit to you that I asked myself that question when I was an intern at UCLA.
Yeah.
Because I kept seeing, what could have potentially been my peers. And, now in hindsight, I all the decisions I made, I don't have any regrets about because I realized that it either challenged me to such a point that it really was an extension of my learning and growth that I needed. And or like there's always going to be something, some tie-in, some. I
think there's things at Loyola that you couldn't get at UCLA, right?
Yeah. Because
I think Loyola is a great school. I'm not like that wasn't like a jab at all. That was like seriously like I think very highly of Loyola, so that's why I'm wondering if you felt the same way, because I do for some reason. Because most of the people that I know that came from Loyola are very respectable, intelligent people. So. Yeah, that's why I thought that.
I have to say, I guess perhaps my hesitancy about that was the fact that I was coming from a really small city that was predominantly working class, Latinx folks, and, then going into the West Side, and especially like what we called at the time, like it was like the bubble, like on the bluff, and it was very insular. It was incredibly beautiful. Well-resourced, and there was so much privilege that I think I remember hearing the term even in high school, culture shock, and I was like, I don't know what that really means, but then I had the opportunity to experience what that was, as a 17-year-old going into college, living by myself essentially for the first time in a dorm room
17.
setting. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's when I graduated, and so it was a very transformative experience.
So you must have a late birthday.
I do. Fall. We're headed there.
Virgo.
Scorpio.
Damn it, Scorpio. Okay, close. My daughter's a Scorpio. So that experience at Loyola definitely did transform you, or just solidify things about you, or what do you think? Do you think
those are formative years, so it goes without saying.
Yeah, in general.
It was the courses, like the coursework. Briefly, I did enter LMU as a graphic design major because I was thinking like, hey, what's the intersection between art and like
a job,
business and a job, right? Like, and not to mention my half sibling is a graphic designer, so I was like really like, a direct influence right there. However, I quickly realized how much that did require it's very solitary work. And I had come to find that I actually really love working with other people, if you will. I'm a little bit of an extrovert. And so then it wasn't until I did some volunteer work as more or less like a teaching artist, that I realized, I was like, oh wow, I love this. Like I love working with young people. I love education.
Does that take us to ArtworxLA?
Oh, and beyond.
Yeah, but I'm saying we're at that point now where ArtworxLA is where you started to work.
That was after graduate school, actually.
After graduate school. Oh, so you got your BA and then did graduate school?
I got my bachelor's in studio arts with the emphasis in education. So it was the arts ed program and art history, because again, it's like the overlap, the tie-ins that I was really interested in. And then I actually took a year off, if you will. I did some service work in New York. So I worked with foster care youth there in New York for a year. And
had nothing to do with art.
It did not.
Wow.
No, and that was more my commitment to community service, because that was something that I also just was able to, dive
just
into.
Naturally, you are that person.
Yeah, and not to mention LMU does pride itself on community service work, and so I was able to participate in a lot of, those opportunities. The other thing I thought I would mention too about my undergrad years was I had this incredible opportunity to study abroad, and that too was very transformative for me at the time, both personally and then even in terms of my academic career, because it was an art history program. It was
Where?
It was in India.
Wow.
Yeah, so I got to travel to a place I'd never been before. I didn't know much
Go
about
to Mexico and Africa. I don't hear a lot of people say India.
Well, I felt like Europe was the more popular
Yeah.
of all the study abroad locations, but it was this program first semester. It was actually my sophomore year that I went, and me and 4 other students. It was the first and only time they offered the program, and I lived in India. I did.
What do you think you brought back from there? Like, as something that changed you? Was there anything that changed you? Or
Well, for one, perspective.
Yeah. That's big. And like, I'm somebody that has stayed in East LA most of my freaking life. So perspective for me is pretty much one-sided. So I can totally understand that and wish that I had a little more perspective myself. That's interesting. And this is all still before your master's, or was that during your master's?
So it was, I'm
Was
sorry.
master's at the same school?
I did my graduate work at Otis College,
Okay.
which, funny enough, is only like a couple of blocks from LMU.
Wow.
And so somehow I went right back to the west side.
Yeah.
And there was a relatively new program, a public practice or social practice program that Suzanne Lacey was running. And
I don't know why I didn't remember that you went to Otis, because like we've had so many Otis people on here. It's a trip.
Yeah.
That's badass. I mean, Otis, props to them for all the badass people that have come out of there. I'm serious. It's just crazy.
Yeah. No, it was, again, an incredible experience too.
Can you explain a little bit what public practice is?
That is the golden question.
Yeah. I mean, because I've heard different explanations of it, but it's always kind of like, mysterious, or I don't know. What's public practice?
The way that I came to it, so if I can start there, is my interest in kind of this intersection between community, arts, and social justice. I'm like, what would that look like? And I think the term we use today, whether it's social or public practice, comes from a long line of artists and just art practitioners that have been doing something very similar, right, in terms of working with community in order to create together. And so, it's not media specific, right? It's not like we're talking about, a movement per se, or even, talking about like a painting or performance, because it could be anything. But it is collaborative, right? I think that's the key component.
With a goal.
Does
it have to have?
There's definitely an idea in mind. However, it's how the artists and those they're working with work together, because that obviously can change.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. I like that a lot.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's probably the best explanation that I've heard, especially because the way you did the whole intersectionality of the 3 things. So it's community, art, and activism, right?
Social justice.
Social justice, yeah.
Kind of one and the same.
That's badass. So yeah, I mean, that literally like helps me understand everything that you do, and like a lot of my friends too now, like, okay, I get it.
Okay.
Not that it's important for me to get it, but But yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it's such an important thing in our communities. I mean, this has actually been happening for a long time, but now there's a name for it, and now people can actually study it and get a degree in it. Like, and you can then go back to your communities, which you've done, and practice in the real public. So seriously, like, badass. So now you graduate and you start. What was your first job out of college? After your graduate program.
So I, mind you, the recession was in terms of context was happening right around that time, and
Always
so
something.
when to even like decide to go to graduate school, like that was a component or factor. But coming out of it was also kind of the aftermath of all of how it impacted the field right, at large. And so I was definitely looking for work, and I was like, okay, how can I now apply this? I ended up getting a position with what was then called the Heart Project, or ArtworxLA.
Okay.
Yeah, now it's called ArtworxLA, and as a workshop coordinator. And so that gave me an opportunity to exercise some of my skill sets or like experiences that I developed in terms of being more or less a teaching artist, and then also helping to work with others, so the collaborative nature, because I was working with the select teaching artists that would offer those weekly art classes to different continuation and alternative high schools throughout the county. So I actually had 5 high schools I would go to every week. Wow. And then developing that rapport and making sure that I was that extra layer of support for them,
for the teaching artists,
and also for the students, right? Because it's always that's where for me that's the most important, right? It should be student centered, and I mean till this day. So just now within higher ed.
Wow. What that's also ArtworxLA is also another like badass little organization that I've never worked with, but so many people have been a part of that, right? Friends of mine that I know that that's like their first job sometimes right out of college too. I mean, like it was yours, but teaching artists, and they're just hustling. It's a hustle too, right? You have to like get out there and work with high school kids, which is never easy, but always rewarding. It's so, every time I get a chance to work with youth, and I recently did a workshop at South Hop, and I stress about it all the time, and I actually told Betty, oh my God, when I got the notice to do this teaching class, I was so stressed out, and I wanted to say no. She's like, well, if you can't do it, say no. I said, no, I want to say no because I'm scared, but once I do it, actually like go through the entire week and finish, it's always so good to see what the work that the kids have done, and the things that they walk away with, and the little thank you notes that you get, and you're like, wow, it's impactful. And so anyways,
to say the least, and incredibly rewarding.
It's crazy. It's crazy how much you see the need for it, or like the need for somebody to be like, hey, try this, or work with me and let's do this together. Not every kid is open to that, but a lot of kids do need that help or that little push.
Arts education is vital. And I think if our schooling was well resourced in order to make sure that was a core subject, that it could really make a big difference. I think right now it's still considered an elective in some regards. Granted, it is part of the requirements to graduate high school. However, again, like it's yes, having arts education, but then also thinking about what type of curriculum, right? Because that's something that I too was exploring at that time when I eventually decided to transition into becoming a full-time teaching artist with PS Arts, which is another nonprofit, arts education nonprofit that worked at the time with elementary school schools throughout the area, right? And eventually expanded to middle school and even to Central California. Wow. Yeah, it's pretty large. And so I asked myself, like, what would a social justice arts education curriculum look like, right? And I was like, okay, well, let me give it a try. let me go ahead and, try it out for myself. So during the course of, I was there for about 4 years at the same school near the Pico Union area. And it was a charter school that eventually became a K through 8th. I was solely responsible for designing and implementing their arts program.
Wow.
So that was well over, at one point, I think, 750 students that I was serving a week.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I talk about creative problem solving, but also, wow, what a beautiful opportunity to be able to facilitate such a conversation about and introduce young people to contemporary artists, to local artists. And, what pride and joy I can, share in saying oh, yeah, this is somebody that lives in Los Angeles.
To be able to actually implement that and put it into the community.
Yeah. And respond, through their own artwork and perhaps even be inspired by somebody who, might even look like them. Right. And so again, thinking about not only implementing arts education, but thinking about the quality and the rigor of that curriculum. And so, I'm noticing a thread here that throughout a lot of my work experiences in the arts and museums, I keep challenging myself, right? That is important to me. And that is something where, I'm okay, let's go ahead and let's give it a try. So I find myself also not only asking these questions and attempting to answer them myself, but again, working with others to see how can we, let us envision together and let us create together or co-create. And sometimes the outcomes are really beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty dope. So you've had this, at that point, you had all this experience working with these nonprofits that reach out to the communities and, I guess, in a way, funnel art into smaller communities. How did you end up at working? How did that switch into working for museums? Was the Fowler the first thing that came that way, or Avenue 50 Studios, where you were?
It all kind of blends together, right? What I recall was that connector was when I was a teaching artist. I was very interested in seeking out and participating in different professional development opportunities, right? Because I wanted to learn more and see how I could implement it in my practice. And so one of the professional development programs that's offered to teachers locally is actually at MOCA. That's focused on the arts. So it's the CAS, or the Contemporary Art Start program, that's been around for some time. And they focus on a specific strategy and, speaking and facilitating conversation around art, contemporary art in particular. And the cool thing is that it's built in to have field trips. So I was able to actually bring my students to MOCA, which was great. And I did that for a couple of years. And that's when I actually started really thinking about, wow, museum education, that's its own sector. That is a job. and how much I began to almost see myself potentially in that position.
So for young people out there listening, you can actually, if you want to be a teacher but you also like the arts, you can actually be a teacher within the arts. And is that this whole educational sector of the museums is that
museum educators, or basically the education department within a museum, do hire sometimes teaching artists or educators that do lead tours, for example, right? Exhibition tours, or maybe oversee events and programs. And so yes, to answer your question, and then interestingly enough, I'm noticing that there are a lot of people that are visual artists or just within the arts that I think seamlessly transition or can see themselves within the museum field. And of course, museums are also vast and wide, right, in terms of types and the different roles even within any respective museum.
And their focus.
Exactly, or the mission.
So if you were to in a short bio, describe the education department of a museum, what would you say that is?
Oh, aside from it being, well, contingent on whoever's leading that department or whatever the mission of the museum is.
Different focuses. Like.
It's essentially education is at the core of museums, right? And so usually it's structured within a department of individuals who are executing educational offerings or programs. So it ranges from, again, tours to events, but ultimately utilizing whatever is part of the artwork or the collection of the museum to further elevate and have that deeper level conversation and also closer looking. Because I think that's the beauty of museums. You get to sit with the work. You're present with it. You get to look at it and observe it versus, of course, seeing it kind of flattened in a picture in a book or even on a screen or something like that.
So the educational department is, for example, the group of people at a museum that creates the pamphlets that...
Everything.
That that show you the artwork and then ask you a few questions about it or how you would react in
They're
whatever.
The ones that make the magic. That's all you need to know. That's all you need to know.
Got it. All right. That's pretty awesome. So now you're getting into museums. And where was your first museum job?
At ESMoA.
At ESMoA, El Segundo Museum of Art.
Yeah, so it's a pretty young art space.
Yeah.
It's an art laboratory in El Segundo.
It's a nice little space. Huge rooms with them.
Yeah, definitely.
And it's like in a little business district, right?
It's in a little downtown strip,
yeah. Okay. Oh, maybe I didn't go to that one then. I'm confusing it with another one. I'm not sure if I've been to it. Okay.
Not to be confused for anything else. Yeah, it is a single gallery. It does have rotating experiences, as far as, if you will, like the traditional, or what some consider as traditional exhibition. And what's also unique about that space is they have an artist in residence program.
Okay.
Yeah, so the artist in residence actually lives atop of the building.
So I have heard of it a lot because I know a few people that have gone there, but I'm confusing it with another one that I've actually been to.
No, I'm curious about this other one too.
Yeah. So what did you start to do there? Were you in the education specialist?
Well, funny enough, a friend at the time just quite literally asked me like, hey, we need a little help right now. And we were wondering...
Where were you at the time when they asked you this? Or what job were you at?
You know what? It's all blending. So this quite literally, I think, was closer to the holidays. So I might have been on break already, is my guess. And I just, was helping out, kind of like a backup. And I remember working right around Thanksgiving. Because they had their open hours. They just needed some support in terms of staffing the gallery. And so I was like, sure, why not? And there were moments where it was a little quiet. So I was actually just like in the space, looking at the work myself, absorbing. And eventually, visitors came in and I would introduce them. I would kind of do, if you will, my version of like a tour, like just impromptu conversation. And making sure that they felt welcome and they understood what the space was all about and a little bit about the artwork. So I guess in a lot of ways that was my introduction to visitor services or visitor engagement.
Back to making presentations.
Exactly. Yeah. See, everything's connected.
It all ties together.
It's all interconnected.
How long did you stay there?
Well, it was, interestingly enough, at the time, there was an opening. So that's when I was able to join the team as a
so you came in as just
specialist.
like a little, but then you became the education specialist, right? So they gave you el título.
Yes.
And so how long did you stay there doing that?
I want to say maybe shy of a year.
Okay.
Mind you, time is very fluid right now. I think. So trying to remember, I'm like, COVID made things a little blurry in terms of time.
And that was your first museum experience, I guess? Museum job?
Yeah, it was.
And you went from there to Was the
The
Fowler?
Fowler afterwards, yes.
All right. I had it
Yeah.
backwards then.
Yeah,
So the Fowler
no
was afterwards.
Mm-hmm. So I was able to apply for an education position at the Fowler Museum at UCLA.
Which is a great spot too.
Yeah. So I was able to actually do a little bit more of that learning in terms of like how exactly one approaches and designs and leads tours. And so that's what I was able to do, is really exercising that muscle of like, okay.
Can you tell us in one sentence? No, I'm just kidding. How someone does that? No, that's awesome. What were some of the shows that you remember from that time?
Aside from the permanent collection, there was a special exhibition, and it was focused on Jose Montoya.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you
Yeah, I
saw
went
that.
to that one.
Okay. Yeah, and so that was really special.
Yeah, that was a badass little show. Yeah.
So we got to see a lot of these ink and pen drawings that one was curated by Selena Preciado, and I remember touring that exhibition and really trying to think, how do I activate this work, right? How do I even begin to talk about this time period? How do I, address all of these these issues and even the connections with today? And so I remember really trying, testing that out, and being able to just learn more too myself.
I'm trying to remember what year that was, but you're right. COVID just messes all up everything up. After that, you went on to MOCA, or was it MOCA right away? Or how did that come about? Your job at MOCA?
By recommendation. That's pretty helpful. And I did apply for a supervisor position. So that one became my first managerial role, and helping to oversee the gallery tenant program, or essentially what was the visitor engagement department. And and that was really new too. Whereas before, a lot of museums and galleries would really look to security officers to protect the artwork on view. There was this idea, hey, what if we created this hybrid role where it would be, a person still protecting the work, however, trying to engage in conversation about the artwork, and also making sure that the visitor felt welcome into the space.
Yeah, instead of a guard. That's great.
And so I was the one to start envisioning and implementing professional development for the gallery attendants.
Wow.
So again, going back to
So you're a pioneer.
I wouldn't exactly go that far. However, I love that I was able to utilize all of those skills and experiences I had building, leading up to that point, right? Whether it be the in-classroom teacher experiences, whether it be, just even working at other museum spaces. So,
how'd you like working downtown? I love downtown.
Downtown is a really nice place to be. However, I would say just Grand Avenue area was, there were some things that are still changing at the time. And the one thing, interestingly enough, I was like, I was too far of reach to just more variety in terms of food locations.
Oh yeah, where you're at. But now, actually, there's a ton more. If you would go now, anyways, that whole area has more food.
Yeah, it's evolved.
Yeah, it's evolved. So I want to know now. I mean, we want to get to where you're at now, and you're at the Vincent Price Art Museum in Monterey Park, East LA, Holmes, and your position there is
curator of education programs.
Curator of education programs. And how did you end up at the Vincent Price, and was it a recommendation, or was it a big battle over 300 applicants?
Well, I could say that I applied for an interim position Now, before the current role that I have, or even the role that I applied to, there was no designated education position at VPAM.
Wow.
And so, yeah, I applied, and I was really, really interested in seeing how I can work with college students. And I absolutely love it. I love the student population, the staff, the VPAM team. I think we have something really special going on. and the space itself too, I think has so much history, right?
Yeah.
Both in terms of just East LA area and its rich histories, as well as VPAM and its more recent kind of exhibitions.
Well, even from the start of VPAM, it's been a pretty interesting place. Yeah.
This is absolutely true. It's a collecting institution, so and our namesake, as many know, Vincent Price himself, actually visited the campus years ago and decided to donate his own works from his personal collection to start the art collection.
I heard his ghost still haunts.
No comment.
Okay. So how is what do you think you've brought to this new job that you're learning, or what do you think what are your challenges here? Or tell us a little bit about your experience at VPAM. It's been about a year now, right?
Almost 2 years.
Almost 2 years, okay. Again,
yeah, COVID. There's a lot. Yeah, I know. I started working remotely, so that in itself was its own experience, right? Working remotely, and it had been some time until I actually was able to meet any of my coworkers, and so that was for me. Thinking about the task at hand was focusing on the Museum Studies Certificate Program, which started last year. And it was something that I was supporting with and providing leadership for, and so that was my main kind of.
So Museum
focus.
Studies Certificate Program, not a degree, but you can actually take this course.
7 courses.
7 courses.
Yeah, within 3 departments. Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty badass. I haven't heard of this.
It's brand new.
Well, I've heard of it, but I didn't know there was a certificate involved in it.
And yeah.
What are the 7 courses?
Well, they're listed under Art and Art History, focusing on contemporary art through a cultural and critical studies lens. There's anthropology as well as library science, and so it's really trying to give you a foundational knowledge, an entry point for those, especially who are interested in entering the field, right?
Can somebody 50 years old enter this course?
Anybody can apply to community college.
I'm asking for a friend.
And yes, anybody who's interested can enroll into ELAC and then start taking courses, even quite literally in the fall. There's courses being offered. The one key component to this program, too, is the internship. So it's built in as part of coursework. And I also now, in my new role, help to oversee the museum internship.
So all the people that are in the museum helping you walk through and all that, those are all interns in this program?
No. So, sorry. Yeah. Just a step back. Our team, in terms of the frontline staff, are actually college students, full-time college students, who are supporting both, again, kind of similar to the gallery attendant role at MOCA, art protection, welcoming visitors, as well as leading their own tours. Yeah.
Can they design their own tours?
Yeah, and that's actually now what I help them do. So I'm also overseeing their training and supporting them in being able to do that for different audiences. Those museum guides, we call them, are integral part of our team as well, right? So, and that's also a part-time position open to any full-time college student, whether ELAC or otherwise. So just saying out there, if you're interested, you can apply to VPAM and come work with me.
Yeah.
But anybody, going back to museum studies, can apply. And you decide, right, what your route is. it could be a 2-year program easily, but some people also decide, they're going to take their time, or they're going to go ahead and just give it a try, see if they're interested. So they maybe will take the first course. So it's an Introduction to Museum Studies and Gallery Practices. And what's beautiful too is that VPAM is very much integrated in as part of, the coursework, right? So you come visit VPAM, you get to speak to us, you get to behind the scenes tour, you get to visit the VPAM collections vault.
Yeah, I mean, it's really intricate. I didn't know anything about museums. I would visit museums, but as I became an artist and started working with museums and, working with the process of giving work or whatever. What do they call it?
Are you talking about like
acquisition, museum acquisitions departments and all that? Man, there's so many tiny details that go into museums that are, it's insane. It's pretty insane. So yeah, it's a giant world that if you're interested in, there's a ton to learn, right? So I recently went to the latest show at Vincent Price. Beautiful show. What do you guys have coming up, or what are you looking forward to at VPAM?
So many cool things. We do have new exhibitions around the corner. So September 17th, we're going to have the opening of 2 shows. One by a local artist, Feng Wen, and and that one's focusing on a more recent public artwork that she worked on. So Sobre Vivir is the title of that show. And then the second one is titled Librería Donceles. And so we will have some books in gallery, and that one is actually an ongoing project. What I'm so excited about is we will be opening a brand new learning lab.
Oh, wow.
The beginning of November. Yeah. So I'm helping to orchestrate
separate
that.
Building?
No, it's going to be at VPAM.
Inside VPAM, okay.
So we're converting one of the gallery spaces into a student-centered space for studying. It's going to be outfitted with the technology, computers, scanners, printers for the students, as well as, of course, if maybe even classes wanted to, or clubs wanted to host any convenings, as well as a non-circulating library or reading room.
Wow.
And so we've received a generous amount of donations of books. And so we really want to make this a learning space for students to come and then, see what comes of it.
That's your new baby.
It is.
That's exciting.
Yeah. And then, let me not forget, especially as I'm speaking to an ELAC alum here, at the same time in early November 5th, we're going to have a district-wide student art exhibition.
Oh, that's right. You were telling me that last week at the show. So a district-wide student art show at VPAM.
Yes.
So all the community colleges in LA will be participating.
All 9 colleges are invited to submit work. Students are invited to submit work of all mediums. And it is a juried exhibition we're going to be hosting. So hopefully you can make it up for that too.
Yeah, no, definitely. I love that. Love that kind of stuff. That's exciting. So you guys have, it's not set yet? Students
currently can submit work. Yeah. And so there's an online process for that. And it is inclusive of students even years back. So because we did not have a show during COVID quarantine times, it is also inclusive of some of those, any students that took art courses during that time. They could submit up to 3 works.
That's badass. And we'll put the link in the bio below. The link in the comments, I want to take you a little bit back now, and I just want to ask you, like, what would you, generic question, but what would you say to that young high school student now, if you could maybe warn yourself or give some advice to that high school student that was doing her presentations, at that learning center? What could you say? And I'm going to follow that up with something else when you finish.
Oh, that's a good question. I think what immediately comes to mind is just be brave. I think that's one. Yeah.
There's something to that, because a lot of times just getting past that wall of like being scared of something and just getting past it and saying, well, I'm just going to do it, and just being brave enough to just take that step. Like they say, 90% is showing up. No, what is it? Anyways, just show up. And so maybe showing up is just that, taking, being brave and taking that step forward to show up. That's good. I like that. So my follow-up question to that is, what do you want to say now to you in the future? And what do you think, what is like, can you visualize like a 10-year, where you would like to be in 10 years? Are you one of those people that have a 10-year plan, 5-year plan? But if you could see 10 years into the future, where do you wish you could be? Or
I look forward to seeing how all the seeds that I planted grow. And I have to say, I maybe just kind of like glazed over it, but the one thing that's like paramount is like mentorship for me, and within my role, and even recognizing that I am a mentor. I for so long I felt like I was the mentee, and not that a mentee couldn't be a mentor at the same time, but how much I've stepped into that role, and so I look to all of those that I've been working with and that I will hopefully continue working with, and seeing how their journeys evolve and unfold, and that's really equally as exciting for me. And I feel like we're all interconnected, right? I'm a part of their journey, and likewise they're a part of mine. So I think that's something I look forward to.
Ta-da! I've been asked to mentor, and I never knew how to do it because I never had mentors for a long time. But actually now, like being in the art world for a while now, I kind of get it now, and I can help people in different ways. I always try to help. I'm definitely somebody that likes to help, but I never would give myself I'm the mentor position. I just didn't know how mentors worked, which is probably really dumb to say, but I'm just being honest. I didn't know how to work as a mentor for other people, but I think that's really important too. And I think a lot of times I was lost because I didn't have mentors, and I had friends that helped me a lot along the way, but I didn't have too many mentors in my
I wouldn't discount that you have mentors now. Maybe they're just not labeled as such, and that you have even
some people actually have that person, that's my mentor, I talk to them all the time. Or I guess I just don't give that title to people. I guess I do. I don't know. Anyways, find mentors. Don't wait till you're 50. Yeah, I think it's really important, and it's a big role that we do need to play with each other, so that we can, share knowledge and help other people move forward faster. I mean, which I guess if I would say I've mentored anybody, it's my nephews and nieces,
Absolutely.
But I was just Dio. But
no, don't say just. That is an important role. I am a tia too, and that's
But that was
important.
definitely mentorship right there.
Absolutely.
Listening to them and talking with them through things. Yeah.
We should just start naming. We're proud Theo, proud Tia. That's part of our the many hats we wear.
Theo is equal to or greater than mentor. No? Sorry, t-shirt ideas.
Okay.
Is there anything that you want to add that we haven't talked about? There has to be something.
I know there's always something, right? I I I guess the one thing I would add is just how much work is happening right now on so many different levels in so many different spaces.
Art in LA right now
Yeah.
is happening.
Mm-hmm. And I look forward to seeing how that kind of unfolds. I look forward to seeing, the possibility. Maybe that's collaboration. Maybe those are exchanges, or just holding space. And I have to say, like you're quite literally doing that right here with this, and you've been doing that even through your own practice too. And so I feel like if we could continue to like just elevate and acknowledge each other, like we can continue moving forward, even through some tough times and some challenges that I'm sure we've all faced.
Yeah.
So,
by the way, we have a shirt that says Elevate at our shop. Go to rafa.la/shop to get that shirt. That's definitely, yeah. I mean, LA right now, the art community is just vibrating and making a lot of things. And there's so many like small connectors too. It's, it's like a microorganisms just connecting to there's so many like tiny little things happening, and I'm excited to be a part of it and to learn from it. And the reason why I do this is because I get to have these conversations with people like you to fill my head with ideas too. So I appreciate you as well. With that, we have a final question that we ask everybody. And are you familiar with it?
I've seen your podcast.
Okay, good. I won't explain too much then. So if a being happened to pop up in front of you and just become amazed at all the work that you do, and they just asked you, Nathalie, how do you do it?
How do I do it? With lots of love.
With lots of love. And that's the truth. Ruth. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you and appreciate all the work that you do. And we'll see you guys next week.